Had a surprise visit from somebody from Cornell, from Shackleton Point, and he was doing an angler survey with me, but then I asked him if I could ask him some questions. He agreed to be our correspondent at quote unquote DEC / Cornell about the lake, and so any questions we may have that we've always wanted to ask, and I asked quite a few today, and some may seem silly, but they were all reasonable questions to me. Two smallmouth.
Two smallmouth. Wonderful. And anything that you tossed right back, like a pickerel or anything like that?
No, just the two bass, and I let them both go.
Wonderful.
Obviously.
And, about what time would you say you got started today?
5.
5. And going after anything specific today, like walleye or bass?
I was in your bass fishing, yeah.
Bass fishing? All right. Going after smallmouth, largemouth?
Smallmouth only.
And any tournaments for you today?
No.
If you had to rate the fishing so far this summer on ONEIDA on a 1 to 5 scale, what would you give it?
Oh, 5.
Then you were obviously made aware of our reg change on walleye from 3 to 5 fish this year.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. And then do you think that the current number of bass tournaments run on this lake is acceptable where it's at?
I don't know what the current number is.
No worries. And then I got one last one for you, 1 to 5 again. How do you think DEC is doing managing ONEIDA Lake?
Huh.
It's a tough one.
You know, I think it's an amazing resource, and between the guys at Cornell and the research they do, and I'd like to think the DEC acts in the best interest of the fishery at all times. I would say they're doing a 5.
Awesome. All right.
But
I
I mean, don't you think that we could have things done a little differently?
Definitely. I mean, I talked to like Tony Buffa, Captain Dan, and those guys. They're out here all day, every day.
So am I. I'm
So,
out here
yeah.
I haven't missed a day since March.
Awesome.
I live down in the river, so I'm literally out here every day, and I would love.
Excellent.
I know everybody has questions about stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
From things that you have no control over, with what happened this spring.
Exactly.
To what the state of the lake is.
Yep.
And it's funny, you came up and I'm doing a close-up picture of a Goby I just caught, and he's that big.
Yep.
You know, well, there must be big ones that make little ones, and what's the state of the Goby in this lake? And
the Gobies here, like the biggest one we have ever seen was 3.5 inches.
okay.
So that's the biggest Goby we've ever seen in ONEIDA Lake since they got in here in 2014. Well, started repopulating in 2014. So
do you guys think scientifically that that's as big as they're going to get?
with the food that's available to them in this lake, quite possibly. I mean, obviously up on the St. Lawrence and in Ontario, they're getting pretty big.
I've caught them as big as 8-9 inches
Exactly.
in the St. Lawrence River.
Exactly. But yeah, we've noticed that they're holding at those like 2 to pushing about 3 size.
So what does that do for our, let's say our top 2 predator fish, the smallmouth and the walleye? What is that influx in, and how big of a bait pool is that? I mean, percentage of bait in this lake, how big does the Goby make up?
It's not that big. Between all the mayfly species that we have, like I'm sure you've noticed pulling in walleye, they're throwing up mayfly larvae like crazy right now.
Yeah.
So like we've noticed the last couple of years that they'll feed on the mayflies all through the spring until they hatch. And that's when they start switching over to the gobies. And then once the shad show up, they switch over to basically exclusively shad. So like last year with the bad shad year, we saw a lot more of them feeding on gobies into the fall and winter.
Right, because they're not going to feed.
Exactly.
They're just going to find something else.
Exactly. So yeah, like, I mean, when the gobies first came in, everybody was thinking, oh God, a predatory fish that's going to go after eggs. And we haven't seen the problems that everybody was anticipating with them. Like, they just have not had the bad impact to the severity that people were expecting.
All right, so 25 years ago in the St. Lawrence River, a 20-inch smallmouth bass would go 3.5 to maybe 4 1/4.
Yep.
Now that 20-inch bass is 6 pounds plus.
Yep.
Are we going to see that kind of size explosion in our bass and walleye population? Like, Because that's solely due up there to that Goby influence, because they're eating them
like mad.
Like mad. How are they going to do that here? And if not, why not? I think everybody that watches this wants to hear this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously the walleye are the top tier in this lake. Like they're going to outcompete everything just by sheer numbers.
Okay. Okay.
But personally, I think the bass are getting a little bigger. I started working for Cornell in 2014, and I mean, a 3-pounder was huge for me.
Yep.
But now I'm starting to see consistently in our harbor over there, like walk down in the mornings, and the bass that are sitting on the nests in there, they're definitely
they're 5.
Yeah, all 3 to 5 pounds. No questions asked. So I think they're getting a little bit bigger as the years have started to go by.
Now this spring it seems like the scuttle on the lake is how skinny these walleyes are.
That's mostly due to shad last fall. We just didn't get that giant run that we normally get. We don't really know why the population was so low, because they come down the river from the Seneca River, Ontario, so they're coming from bigger water into here to spawn. And
so I live on the river and I'll see, okay, so that's what I'm seeing in the fall?
They're the little ones in the fall that you'll see rising up in a big shoal.
Okay, because I haven't go by my house, but I always thought they were emeralds.
We do get emeralds too. They come the same time of year. The shad are a little more oblong, like a little more oval.
Yeah.
And we just see a lot more of them.
And it's primarily coming in from this river, not the other end?
They do come in the other end, but definitely not as many.
Because they're coming from so they're coming from Ontario?
Yep.
And they're spawning and coming in the fall?
Yep.
Every other bait fish is a spring spawn, right? I mean,
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, shad are weird. They're different. They're just built different.
Now you hear people say about these shad hatch this time of year or into the summer.
Yep, these are the larvals.
Okay.
Yep, so shad eggs, they'll come in the fall, drop them, and they're one of those species that like they incubate.
Okay.
So they'll sit in the mud and settle, and then in the spring they pop off. They're weird. They're like some of the down south.
It's almost like a bug.
Yeah. So down south they have a few more species of them, and it's the same deal. Like guys will go out scooping for crayfish, and they'll be sifting through a bunch of shad eggs in the mud with them.
That's crazy. So what shad do we have? What
gizzard?
We have gizzard only in this.
Yep.
Man, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean they're a cool fish. There's a shitload of them if it's a good year, and if you can catch them, they're good smoking. Like if you get a nice adult fish.
So those so how big are you talking about? Those fish coming in the fall to spawn?
They're usually about yay big.
Yeah. Like
a couple of inches at most. Full adult shad, they're bass sized.
And we have them in here?
Yep. Everyone, not a ton. In the fall, we'll see them. So like when we're out here doing our shocking in the fall.
Yeah, I see you guys up in here all the time in the red boat.
Yep, we'll pull them up every once in a while when we shock. They're one of those fish, you just touch them and they start bleeding.
Okay.
It's wild. Like you just scoop them with the net, and as soon as it touches their nose, they got a bloody nose.
Okay.
Just take a couple scales, toss them back. But.
So what is the... I've been on this lake since I was 4 years old, and I've heard people say different things, like it's a white bass or a silver bass, or what is that other...
White perch.
White perch.
White perch.
Okay.
There's a million names for them.
Yep.
Just like the drum here, guys call them sheep's head.
Sheep's head, yeah.
Buffalo. But yeah, they are white perch. Because they're the sharpest thing in the lake. I mean, we get a bunch of them over in Cleveland.
Yep.
Over that way, there's usually a ton shoaled up over in there.
Over off the bar right there.
Yep. And then yeah, we used to have white bass in here. I can't remember what the reasoning was.
So you're saying white bass like a hybrid striper?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back in like the 50s to the 70s, they were like the most popular fish to throw in a lake to get something under control because they were sterile. So guys say that they'll catch them every once in a while, but they're a white perch.
They're a white perch.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just don't have them in here anymore.
Over the winter, we had a ton of guys, even into the spring, showing pictures of browns and what they thought were Atlantics, and some were.
It was a good year for them this year through the ice. Like, a brown trout on ONEIDA through the ice is definitely not unheard of.
Right.
This was just a uncharacteristically good year for it. So the guys catching the salmon were definitely down by Fish Creek.
Yeah.
Like, that's where they all are.
Yep. Yep.
And then
Now, are those federally stocked or federally funded stocked fish?
Yep. So some of those, I don't think any of the ones that I saw had tags. I think I heard about one guy that got one that had a pit tag in it. So he called it in and all that, and they said, "Thank you very much. Enjoy the fish."
Okay.
But yeah, I know one guy that lives in Billington. He caught a brown off of his dock mid-May.
First brown trout I ever caught was in Billington Bay when I was maybe 8 years old.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been a weird year for him. When we were doing the hatchery stuff, there were 4 in the trap nets that we caught. Yeah. And I mean, normally we get 1 or 2.
And so now is that a plant? Is that something that will ever be cultivated here, or that's simply an after effect? They come out of the creek and they live out here because there's a lot of food.
Yep, they were just out here on a little adventure. When they come out in the winter, they're coming out here and feeding.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, once April hits, it's already starting to get too warm for them in this lake. So they're back in the creeks.
How is that better for them? Wouldn't they be better out in the deepest of the part of the lake than in a creek? I mean, I don't understand why they would do that.
Yeah, and then trout behavior.
Because of oxygenation? I mean,
that too, yeah.
Okay.
So they're gonna go toward wherever the coldest water source is and wherever they can get the most oxygen. So they're just keyed in on that. So once they feel the temperature hit a certain mark, they just need to find fast flowing water.
Gotcha.
And that's where they just keep following that.
Is there any subsurface spring feeding in this lake?
A little bit.
Okay.
You'll catch bass on, like I catch bass on dry flies, and emergers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, not a ton.
Jake from Cornell just spent 20 minutes with me, and that's what restores your faith in a government that we may not always trust, a system that we're not sure if it's working for us or against us, you know, a research facility that maybe we don't know the ins and outs of. I'm not saying he just knew everything and told me everything, and I don't think that there's a conspiracy going on, but we just talked about some great stuff that I didn't know, and I've been on this lake my whole life. I love our lake, and if I can pass on some of that information to everybody else that loves our lake, then our lake will be well loved. All right, peeps, beautiful Sunday morning. I want to thank everybody for all their support. Keep your tip up.